Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite videos every year that we're able to make weekly is going to be our updated 2023 rookie draft with NFL landing spots. Now, of course, the NFL draft hasn't happened. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to be grabbing random mock drafts online and say, okay, what if this happens? Because almost anything's in the range of outcomes. How would we evaluate these rookies with these landing spots? And what could a potential draft order actually look like? So we're going to go through the first round of what a rookie draft may look like with this mock draft from Tankathon. But before we get into anything, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down there in the comment section. And in that comment section, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy, where you can check out all these cool player props weekly. You can get into drafts with us on the live stream pretty much every single night. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they are going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So it's pretty much free for you to check out. And on top of this, it's available in damn near every state. Link in the description, link in the comment section. But that should be about it. Let's go through. Let's dive into the 101 here. And of course, we are going to go Bijan Robinson almost anywhere he lands with any type of draft capital. You know we're going to have to rank our guy at 1. First off, Hook 'em Horns. You know I'm very biased here. I'm going to try to remove all my bias I can this offseason. But I'll be very honest. I graduated from the University of Texas a few years back. So of course I'm rooting for our guy here. Funny that we are recording this the week after J.K. Dobbins comes back from his injury, and J.K. Dobbins absolutely dominates, but we have to be realistic with ourselves and how these NFL teams view running backs, and they view the running back position significantly more replaceable than how we do in fantasy football, than dynasty fantasy football. We see this time and time again. One of the best examples I can think of a running back that actually had decent draft capital, that was good when given the opportunity in the NFL, was an intriguing prospect, but because of injuries early on in his NFL career, it opened up the door for his team to go through and draft his replacement, Kerryon Johnson, with the Detroit Lions. I don't want to say J.K. Dobbins is going to turn into Kerryon Johnson, but I'm just coming out and making an example of it's not completely out of the range of outcomes for an NFL team to go out there and replace that running back they previously had drafted in round 2. While Bijan Robinson would most likely cede some touches to J.K. Dobbins' scenario. No, Bijan Robinson, 3-down running back playing alongside Lamar Jackson. This would open up a significant amount of rushing lanes for him. He'd be a hyper-efficient running back. We've seen the running back in Baltimore lead the NFL in yards per carry time and time again, just based off how Lamar Jackson affects defensive coordinators and opposing linebackers with his own ability off the edge. So we're going to assume that if Bijan Robinson goes in the first round, he's the 3-down running back in Baltimore. He has the receiving down skill set. He would still be our number 1 running back overall, or number 1 player overall. And then at 2, instead of going with the first quarterback off the board in this mock draft, we are going to be going with the second guy in CJ Stroud. The reason we're taking CJ Stroud here is, according to Tankathon, he's going number 2 to the Seattle Seahawks. And if you were to look at this situation that he'd be stepping into in Seattle, this situation made Russell Wilson look like a good quarterback. I mean, this situation could not be better. Obviously, Tyler Lockett is aging out, although Lockett has been incredibly impressive so far this season. You still have DK Metcalf there. You have Kenneth Walker with an established running game with a respectable offensive line that people tried to make it sound like it was horrendous when Russell Wilson wasn't down. You have a good coaching staff. Obviously, CJ Stroud would not be going into a situation that's as good of Ohio State from a college football standpoint. And I know that's going to be the number 1 hesitation that people have with CJ Stroud and really all of these Ohio State quarterbacks is you go from being the best quarterback in the best offense on the best roster in college football, essentially, to then being selected at the very top of the NFL draft. Look at Justin Fields, to a horrendous situation, and it's going to be very difficult for you to elevate your team. Whereas it's a very interesting spot for any quarterback going into the Seattle Seahawks with this Denver Broncos pick, and that you're going to a good roster. You're only on it because that other team was able to go through and make a very, very good trade. But let's go down to our third guy. This will be Bryce Young. Bryce Young went first in this draft to the Houston Texans. With Young, just steps into a significantly worse situation than what you'd have with CJ Stroud. I mean, with Houston, if we think here for the long term, now, yes, they have their own first-round pick. They have the Cleveland first-round pick. Then they have, multiple first-round picks to come. That Deshaun Watson trade is going to set up Houston nicely for the long term. But for the short term, Bryce Young would be stepping into a very bad situation. So even if the NFL is going to give him the edge over CJ Stroud in the NFL draft, if these are how the situations would be, I would kind of bet on the second quarterback if he's going to be in a dramatically better offense. But going over to 4, we are going to be going with Jahmyr Gibbs, who lands in arguably the best offense in the NFL, or at least one of them, in the first round. Like, what else could you ask for? Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Buffalo Bills at 31. And I know right away people are going to just lose their minds about this landing spot. Jahmyr Gibbs, you cannot bring up his name, or anybody on a TV can't bring up his name without comparing the man to Alvin Kamara. You understand why, with what he can do in the open field, and on top of this, how good he is at catching the football. That's going to be his number one skill set, is catching the ball. What's going to be important is what the size is at the NFL Combine. If you think that he can transition over to be that Alvin Kamara, that Aaron Jones, the DeAndre Swift, the Travis Etienne at the next level where he can be used as a 3-down running back, I'm a little more hesitant about this Buffalo Bills situation than just saying, oh, okay, it's an elite level offense, because A, the Bills don't want to run the ball. B, Josh Allen with this mobility doesn't really need to check the ball down. He's not Drew Brees, who has to just stand there in the pocket and look for anything when the pocket collapses. And C, we know that Josh Allen is going to take up almost every single touchdown at that goal line. So the Buffalo Bills isn't as good of a landing spot as you would think about, just with an opportunity standpoint for a running back, even if it is an elite level offense. But going over to our next spot, I know everybody is going to hate this. In this draft, Will Levis goes to the Detroit Lions at 4. Now, of course, this is with the Los Angeles Rams selection, and I know everybody here is not a Will Levis fan, and I'm going to break some news to you. Nobody in Dynasty was a Josh Allen fan either. I think the Dynasty fantasy football community is horrendous at evaluating quarterbacks. I think that what we should be doing is looking at the situation they're stepping into, the NFL draft capital they have, and to see if they have any rushing upside. And with Will Levis, he'd be stepping into a phenomenal situation with the Detroit Lions, where you have Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, and a very good offensive line. We've seen rushing upside from him, is specifically his junior season. This would be top 5 NFL draft capital. So regardless of what your personal thoughts are on Will Levis, maybe you think there's no way he goes this high in the NFL draft. I'll tell you, if he does, I'm probably going to be on him regardless of if you think he's a great or horrible quarterback. I know most people think he's bad. But dropping down to our next guy, we're going to be going with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who falls to pick 16 behind Jordan Addison in this draft, behind Quentin Johnson in this draft. I don't really care. I'm going to be looking at Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and I think he is the number 1 wide receiver. And I'm way more willing to just say, you know what? The landing spot doesn't matter at the wide receiver position. Bet on talent time and time again. And if we are going to be looking at what he did his sophomore year at Ohio State, he has to be seen as the best wide receiver prospect. I don't know how these people can go with Jordan Addison over him. You had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave in this offense. Chris Olave, a senior. Garrett Wilson, a junior. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, a sophomore, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba dominated those 2 phenomenal rookie NFL wide receivers. Those 2 guys that go almost as borderline top 10 picks in the NFL draft last year. I know he doesn't give you anything this season due to the injuries. I'm all in on Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I have no hesitations. I know most people are putting him behind Jordan Addison. Addison will be our next guy. He finds arguably a better landing spot going to the Green Bay Packers on the surface. But if we really think about this, how much longer does Aaron Rodgers have in Green Bay? How many of us are actually going to be surprised if Aaron Rodgers is with the Jets next year, is with the 49ers next year, is anywhere but the Green Bay Packers? Maybe this is how they convince him to stay. Maybe this is how they go, okay, man, we're going to go one last push for it. We gave you your money, and we're going to draft a wide receiver in round 1. Pick your guy. You want Jordan Addison. Most people do. Here you go. Let's make that one last push. I don't know. I think maybe you end up getting Jordan Love next year for the Packers. I mean, we'll see. If you look at the underlying metrics for Jordan Addison with his market share numbers at USC, he's not as good as Jackson Smith-Njigba, at least not on paper, even though I know a lot of film guys love him. Now, going over to our next guy, Quentin Johnston actually goes as the #1 wide receiver in the NFL draft here, but he goes to the Carolina Panthers. Come up with the worst landing spot. I mean, it doesn't matter that he has a great college prospect profile. It doesn't matter that he's a top 10 pick. And I know we are saying wide receiver landing spots don't matter as much as what you'll find with other positions. But how the hell am I supposed to look at a wide receiver going over to Carolina and get excited about it? After DJ Moore has been essentially imprisoned in Carolina his NFL career. DJ Moore, I want to say he's probably a better wide receiver. DJ Moore would still be the wide receiver one in this offense. DJ Moore just signed the extension. Can't produce here, so why would we assume that anybody else can? I don't see how Carolina fixes their quarterback situation either if they're going wide receiver in round 1. But now going over to our next guy, Anthony Richardson is someone that people are more excited about than Will Levis at this point. But of course, we're listening to the NFL draft capital here. Anthony Richardson goes late round 1 to the New York Giants. Great coaching staff that obviously, needs a few pieces here. They've just been the unluckiest team in the NFL with injuries, at least at the wide receiver position this season. Anthony Richardson has the potential rushing upside to where if he would be a real life NFL starting quarterback, I would feel very comfortable in our Superflex leagues of us being able to go through and put him in our lineups, similar to someone we'll talk about in near the end of this video. But going over to our next guy, we're going to go Michael Mayer. Great landing spot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not too worried about Cade Otton long term. I think that honestly it's kind of like Harrison Bryant, just a guy kind of had to roll his rookie season because there's nobody else there. Phenomenal tight end prospect coming out of Notre Dame. If you look at the past 2 seasons, the man has a ridiculous production profile. He's getting the NFL draft capital here as well. But as we have said time and time again, why I was not drafting Kyle Pitts his rookie season, why we were taking ETN instead, and why people just ridiculed us for no end last offseason. It is more difficult to evaluate rookie tight ends than any other position. And when these rookie tight ends hit, their dynasty value doesn't really increase. The perfect example of this is going and looking at TJ Hawkinson in that 2019 draft class. Going and looking at Noah Fant. These were 2 guys that went pretty much back-to-back in rookie drafts. TJ Hawkinson that season was about the 107 in tight end premium leagues. And TJ Hawkinson since then, as an extremely young tight end, has had a very good NFL career. And Noah Fant, obviously, not so much. But Hawkinson, every single year, every single game he's been healthy, he's been pretty damn good. And what has happened to his dynasty value? Has it gone up? Even though every single person in that 2019 offseason told us, oh, Mason, I understand tight ends aren't going to produce early on. I'm drafting TJ Hawkinson, and I know we're not going to lower his value. I know that his value is going to stay the same regard. No, his value does not stay the same. His value does not go higher. TJ Hawkinson has been phenomenal at an extremely young age. Go try to trade him for the 106 right now. Even in your tight end premium league. See what happens. See what the owner says. I'm genuinely curious. Do you think you could get the 106 for Hawkinson? I don't think so. These tight ends don't increase their value. People say that they understand that rookie tight ends, that young tight ends in general won't produce right away. And even if they do, people go, okay, yeah, sure. I guess he's okay. No, just go trade that pick and go get TJ Hawkinson rather than drafting Michael in the first. Now, going down to our next guy, we're going to go Josh Downs. Going to the New York Giants. I actually really liked Wan'Dale Robinson last offseason for the price that you were getting him at. Now, with Josh Downs, he would be stepping into a wide receiver room that I think you have to have less faith in Wan'Dale Robinson coming off a significant injury. Sterling Shepard with his own significant injury. There's nobody here for the New York Giants long-term. Josh Downs would step in and pretty much immediately be the wide receiver 1. You'd have a quarterback competition between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones if this draft ended out playing the way Tankathon thinks. I think it would be a good spot. I really like the prospect profile as well, especially with what he was able to do last season, not this season. Will be something to monitor with all these day 2 wide receivers. Now we're going to go Hendon Hooker as our next guy. Someone that I really don't know if he's going to be a starting NFL quarterback. Very similar to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was one of my most drafted quarterbacks, one of my most drafted players in the 2020 offseason from a dynasty fantasy football perspective. And was this because I was some expert quarterback scout and I knew Jalen Hurts was going to be some great ass? No, I did not know that. I did not know Jalen Hurts was going to be a great real life NFL quarterback. I had no idea. And I was willing to admit I had no idea, just like I'm saying with Hendon Hooker. But why were we taking that player? Because when you get the NFL draft capital of a second round pick, at some point you are most likely going to get a shot. At some point. I don't know if you're going to succeed with that shot from a real life NFL standpoint, but what I do know with Jalen Hurts at the time and with Hendon Hooker now is when you get that shot, you will immediately be someone we can put in our starting lineup in Superflex leagues based off your rushing upside and your rushing upside alone. So if you do somehow end up turning into a real life NFL quality starting quarterback, which I don't know if it's going to happen, you have all the upside in the world in a Superflex league if you have that rushing upside. Obviously, I'm not saying Hooker's going to be Jalen Hurts. I don't think that is even in the range of outcomes. But when you get the chance to bet on a quarterback with this draft capital that has rushing upside in a Superflex league, you do it, especially if they're going to come at a massive discount. Now, our last guy on this list is going to be Zach Evans. I wanted to just include a running back here to round this out. I know this is very lazy. I know this is very boring, but full transparency, I think we have been one of the most successful people every offseason in evaluating rookies coming into the NFL with our process. Our process at wide receiver is mainly dictated by production, and our process at running back is mainly by draft capital and athleticism and size. Don't really look at the production too much. Mainly look at NFL combine numbers with those running backs with their size and athleticism and their NFL draft capital. Wide receiver, I don't care too much about that. We mainly care about their production. Very difficult for me to evaluate running backs right now until we get those official numbers. But I will say Zach Evans, if he were to go day 2 to the Arizona Cardinals, pretty good landing spot. James Conner would have 1 year left on the deal with Zach Evans. A lot of people want to view him as that 3-down running back. And hell, he'd give the draft capital to have a shot. Now, I think that's all I got for you. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down there in the comment section. I'll try to answer as many of those as I can. That's all I got for you. Really hope you have a great day and really hope I get to see you with the video tomorrow.